Hello there, beautiful children of God. It is good to be with you today. My name is Brian Steele, and I have the privilege of being the pastor at St. Paul United Methodist Church in Bloomfield Hills and Hazel Park United Methodist Church. This past Sunday, we started a new worship series in our churches, Holy and Sassy Women of the Bible. The purpose of this series is to see how God does not discriminate when it comes to gender, and that often we overlook many of the most powerful women in the Bible. Now, our worship series is only going to be 5 weeks long, so there's no way that I can cover all the stories of women who I'd like to. So this week in our messages, I'm going to just briefly tell the story of two women who didn't quite make the worship series, but are still worth learning about. Today I want to tell you about the Old Testament prophetess Huldah. Huldah isn't exactly an A-lister in terms of biblical heroines or even biblical characters. She's not a name that comes up in your modern day Bible studies. Huldah comes to us in the 22nd chapter of the book of 2 Kings, which is another reason why she's overlooked, because even if you start reading 2 Kings, it gets kind of hard to get to the 22nd chapter. We find Huldah living in the land of Judah, and things aren't good, spiritually speaking. The place that was formerly completely devoted to God is now the problem child. The kings of Judah had gone from depending on God to looking for quick fixes for the problems, and they were turning to idols. But then there's a new king who takes the throne. Ironically, this will sound ridiculous to us, but he took the throne at just 8 years old. And it is this young king who realizes how bad things really are and that they need to turn back to God. And eventually King Josiah realizes that things are even worse than he thought. This community is not following the law of Moses at all, which was kind of like their ancient Bible. Their local priest had lost these books. And when they found them and start reading from them, and Josiah's hearing all this about how far off they are, he just goes straight into mourning, and he asks for help. Well, the good news in this case for Josiah is that there are 3 prophets in their area who he can go to for help: Jeremiah, Zephaniah, and Huldah. If you're familiar with the Bible, you've probably heard of Jeremiah and maybe Zephaniah. Jeremiah is what we call a major prophet, and Zephaniah is also a minor prophet. They were the authors of some of our books of the Bible, and they had a lot of acclaim to them. They were the big names in this ancient Judah. But then there's also Huldah, and we haven't heard about her to this point. So why does Josiah send his people to ask Huldah for help and not Jeremiah or Zephaniah? Huldah doesn't have any royal bloodline or any powerful connections. He probably didn't even have a ton of formal education, considering her place as a woman. And even her name itself, which was important for that name, Huldah's name meant either mole or weasel or some type of burrowing animal. Would you name your child after basically a varmint if you thought they were capable of great things? That's just to say that Huldah was born into this world with little expected of her. But Huldah does not let any of that define her. And King Josiah trusted her. He trusted her because he could tell she was telling him the truth. Being at the margins of society, that led Huldah to not being owned by anyone. She didn't have to depend on getting any proceeds by giving people just good news. She did not have to hide from the truth of the national crisis. And Huldah wasn't afraid of confrontation. As I've learned about Huldah, if I had met her back in her day, I think I probably would have been afraid of her. But to his credit, King Josiah, just a young man, listened. For this time, Huldah was a woman who instructed a king. That's just absurd. So maybe we as a society need to pay attention to the women who are telling men of power truth that we don't always want to hear. Podcaster Kat Armas says of Huldah, her commitment to telling God's truth, even and especially the hard truth, specifically to men in power, changed the course of history. Her commitment to telling God's truth, even and especially the hard truth, specifically to men in power, changed the course of history. That's something for us to reflect on today. So that's it, friends, for today's message. We'll see you back here on Thursday. Go in peace, knowing you are loved.